Hello, my friends. This is Deepak Chopra, and I am very privileged today to be speaking to Ron Garan, and his book is Floating in Darkness, A Journey of Evolution. And I've been reading it. I just want to share with you a little bit from the flap. Former NASA astronaut and highly decorated combat fighter pilot Ron Garan racked up 178 days in space and more than 70 million miles in 2,842 orbits between tours on the International Space Station, flying on the US Space Shuttle, and Russian Soyuz spacecraft. Prior to these journeys, he conducted research in the world's only undersea research lab, Aquarius. Today, Ron is celebrated for his research in space and for his humanitarian contribution to life on Earth. And you can visit his website, www.rongaran.com. More details to follow. So first of all, Ron, it's a great privilege to be with you. I've been reading your fascinating book. Let's start off with a few questions, and then we'll just shoot the breeze.
Okay.
And try and figure out the mystery of our existence, which is a mystery, no matter what we try and how hard we try to understand. Existence is a mystery. And existence, I mean, your existence, my existence, or for that matter, for anything that exists is a mystery right now. And it's getting even more mysterious. One of my favorite quotes is from Rumi. He says, exchange your cleverness for bewilderment.
Yeah.
So right now,
exactly.
At least I can say with great clarity that I'm bewildered. But okay, so I see that you began your journey on planet Earth or spaceship Earth in 1961. So just to give you a little bit of context, 1961, I was finishing high school and then starting pre-med. And 1964, I went to medical school. 1969, when you were, I believe, 8 years old, I was doing a rotation in a village in India outside of Delhi. And they brought a young boy to see me in the village. He was about 16 years old, and the villagers brought this boy to see me. I was interning, basically. I was still a medical student at the end of my last year of medical school. And they said, this boy needs to be examined. He's gone insane. He's mad. I said, why do you say so? And they said, he just came back from Delhi and he says there are men on the moon. He's definitely mad.
Yeah, so, that's impossible.
So I said, let's talk to him. And so he came by, and of course there was no radio where we were, but he had heard the news on the radio, and he was kind of very excited about it. And the villagers said, well, we worship the moon. The moon is a goddess for us. So what's he talking about? And then, of course, I went back to all the writings of Einstein. The moon would still be there if no one was looking at it. And that got me into the hard problem of consciousness, which we'll come to later. But that's my story from 1969. And then 1971, Edgar Mitchell walked on the moon. And I had the great privilege of actually making friends with him. And he visited the center. We became very good friends right towards his last few years. So that's my insight. Now, I want to know from you a little bit. I've read the book, but I'd love to hear from you where you were born and your early childhood. Well, let's start with that, if you don't mind.
Sure. But first, it's a great honor to speak with you. Thank you for this opportunity. So I was born in New York, in Yonkers, New York, as you said, in 1961, and that was a That was a pivotal year. It was the year the first human in history flew in space, Yuri Gagarin, followed a few weeks later by Alan Shepard's first flight, so the first American in space. And then there's on the day I was born, on the actual day I was born, the Soviet Union exploded the largest man-made explosion in history. To this day, it's still
that in your book, yeah.
Yeah, and it was called the Tsar Bomba. It was a 50 megaton weapon, and Floating in Darkness is a autobiographical narrative that serves as an allegory for the evolution of society, not only where we've been, but where we need to go. And I don't want to give too much away, but it starts at the very, very beginning. And so on the day I was born, that weapon was exploded, and it serves as a pretty strong, and that's in the prologue, and it serves as a pretty strong juxtaposition for the first sentence of chapter 1, which has me reporting for duty at nuclear strike alert in West Germany during the height of the Cold War. And so, and that chapter is called Mutually Assured Destruction. And so you can imagine that that's a good literary tool to describe tribalism, but not just the negative aspects of tribalism, also the positive aspects of tribalism too. And if we become a tribe of Earthlings, imagine what we could do with that type of willingness to self-sacrifice for a greater cause.
So go a little further. When did you first get interested in aviation, and how did you become a pilot? What was the training that was involved? And I know you were in Desert Storm. So tell us about your feelings as you expanded your awareness of space and what it meant to fly.
Well, it was about the same time as they brought that young boy to you, who they thought was mad because he was saying that men were walking on the moon. And July 20th, 1969 is my most vivid childhood memory. Because that was a day where I, as a young boy, along with millions and millions of people all around the world, watched those first footsteps on the moon. And I don't think I would have been able to put it in these words at the time, but at some level, I realized that we had just become a different species. We were a species no longer confined to our planet, and I wanted to be a part of that group of explorers that got to step off our planet and look back upon ourselves. And that dream came true about 4 decades later. But on that day, on July 20th, I really felt like I was floating on a sea of possibility, that anything was possible. And so that was a very, very vivid childhood memory.
What was it like to be in space for the first time and float?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question, because I think I'm going to answer it differently because I'm answering it because you asked the question. I think the big thing was being physically detached from the Earth made me feel deeply, deeply interconnected with everyone on it. I think that physical separation allowed me to become a detached witness to the beauty and the splendor of our planet. And what I remember distinctly was, the first time I looked out the window and I saw the Earth, just being hit with this overwhelming wave of gratitude for the planet that we've been given and for the opportunity to see the planet from that vantage point. And it's just indescribably beautiful. There's no words to describe how beautiful our planet looks from space. And in the same breath, though, I think I was hit with the sobering contradiction between the beauty of our planet on one hand and the unfortunate realities of life on our planet. I think we all know that life is not always as beautiful here on the surface as it appears to be from space. And that filled me with a sense of injustice, a sense of it doesn't have to be this way. It's within our power to change that. And I think that really created a call to action in me to share this perspective with as many people as I can.
I remember Edgar telling me that on the way back from the moon, as he looked out of the window, every direction he looked at, all he saw was infinity.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was filled with awe and mystery and humility.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back, of course, he started the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where I've interacted a lot with the scientists there. And right towards the end, Edgar anyway, felt that his experience was not only one of transcendence, but it was the most sacred experience he could have. Did you feel a sense of holiness?
For sure. I think, as Edgar described, looking out into infinity, and I had a similar experience on a spacewalk where I felt I was looking out into infinity. And I think it gives you the sense that you're looking beyond the veil of reality into, and in the book I describe it as seeing the light streaming in from the cave entrance in Plato's allegory of the
I
cave.
saw that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
And I really felt that because I think infinity is the building blocks of reality. And I was given a glimpse into that in a really profound way, and one that affected me in every aspect of my life.
I love that phrase. Infinity is the building blocks of reality. It's a very beautiful way of saying that reality is a projection of an infinite being or consciousness, or what we would otherwise call God, but it's not fashionable today to use the word God. So I love that phrase. Infinity is the building blocks of everything that we call reality in the finite experience of our short journey on planet Earth. I mean, we are part of the finite expression of that infinite, whatever it is, mystery. I think of the infinite being having an infinite workshop, a digital workshop,
Yeah.
constantly printing out universes all over the place. And that's right now the latest theories in
Yeah.
science tell us that
Multiverse.
there might be infinite universes,
Yeah.
not just ours.
But I think the important thing in the story that I just told is that you don't have to go to space to see beyond the veil. That there's many intersections with that infinite existence, beauty, love, joy, peace. All of those, I think, are passageways or holes in the fence, in the picket fence, if you will, that we could look through and see beyond.
My very special guest today is the author of this amazing book, Floating in Darkness, A Journey of Evolution, Ron Garan, celebrated astronaut and actually a pioneer in many areas. And we are speaking of his book, which you must read and buy if you want to expand your horizons and even get to know yourself. I'm just going to read some of the chapter headings. So it starts with a prologue, red shift of an expanding universe, and then introduction, starting conditions. But the book is divided into 3 parts. So part 1, Epoch A, shadows on the cave. You just heard Ron speaking about it. He also spoke about mutually assured destruction, and I'm going to come to that in a moment. He spoke about the storm and the ground war. And then in part 2, he talks about leaving the cave, the top of the mountain. In part 3, a path in miracles, road to the launch pad, hope for tomorrow, 3 ships pass in the night, home in the heavens, rock, flower, and blade of grass, return to earth, the quiet revolution, the call to action. And then he has notes, and I've been reading his call to action last night. Actually, you kept me awake.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. But it was a very interesting way to see how you concluded your book after sharing with us this extraordinary journey. So now, the call to action, of course, is very practical, very relevant. And so I ask you, Ron, what is this about humans that, one is the scientific revolution is only 400, 500 years old. Before that, we had the agricultural revolution 12,000 years ago, and the cognitive revolution when humans started to tell stories and create models of reality, whether it was money or whatever, everything that we experience today. in a way is created by humans. Latitude, longitude, Greenwich Mean Time, amazing ways of navigating now the internet and Zoom and all these technologies, including VR and augmented reality. Um, all has happened, what we assume today as normal has happened only since the last 100 years. Theories of relativity, 1905, 1915, quantum mechanics, starting again, same era, and up to 1935, the major revolutions. So were it not for science and technology, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have been to space, nor would you have had the sacred, holy experiences. And yet the same science has been used to create nuclear weapons, mm-hmm. cyber warfare, poison in our food chain, climate change, extinction of species, destruction of the ecosystem, destruction of our own genetic information as the microbiome, and mechanized ways of killing each other. And doesn't stop. I mean, every time you look at the news, somewhere something is happening. In fact, today, Veterans Day is the first. Is it Veterans Day today?
Yes, it is.
First day that in this almost a century that the US isn't involved in an active war. Mm-hmm. So, but this is not true of the US. It's true of every country. I mean, whether it's China, Russia, whatever, Eastern Europe, the whole world. India has nuclear weapons now. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. And the whole thing is about who deserves to have them and who doesn't. What are we doing with science that has become so, at least science by itself is neutral, obviously. But what is it about humans that we can take the most extraordinary creativity and turn it to diabolical technologies where we risk our extinction? We are being told right now that it's 1 minute to midnight if you mm-hmm. look at climate change and everything else that's going on, not to mention war, terrorism. What is it about us that we can be divine and diabolical at the same time? And what I know your call to action, urgent, mm-hmm. but first of all, why? Why we still have medieval tribal minds and these modern capacities? It's not a good combination.
Yeah, we're at a very dangerous point in time right now. I just got back from COP26. I just landed night before last from Scotland, where it's very clear that we are approaching midnight, and science is going to help us get out of it. But it's just a tool. It's not the end all be all. I'm obviously a very large proponent of the scientific method and science, and I think science casts a light on the mysteries of the universe. But with any light, there's shadow, right? And so the shadow that comes from that light is some of the things that you brought up. It's the tendency for us to take something that's inherently good and find ways to use it in a divisive way, in a destructive way. And I think that comes from our false sense of separation, that we think that there are others. We haven't yet embraced the truth that there is no them. There's only us. And you talked about all these eras of humanity, and I think the first giant leap of human evolution was when we were able to self-reflect, to realize that I'm an individual. I'm in this world. I can project my conscious thought backwards or forwards, billions of years if I so choose. I can predict the trajectory of the future, of where it's going based on what I've seen in the past. And these are all great things. But I think that we're on the verge of a new giant leap of human evolution. And that's where we realize that the self that we're self-reflecting on is not just an individual. It's part of a larger cosmic journey that we're all part of. I think in order for us to solve all these big problems, if you look at things like global warming or deforestation or ocean acidification or some of the social issues that we have in our world, they're all really challenging and problematic, but they're just symptoms. They're symptoms of the underlying, they're like the tip of the iceberg, but underneath the waterline are the societal structures that are in place, are are this false sense of separation, that this idea that we are separate from nature, that we're from Earth, we're not of Earth, that we're separate from each other, that, I can do things in isolation, I can do things that don't affect anybody else. And we've been trained that the way we navigate through this is through consumption, is through the production and consumption of goods, and that's what's going to make us feel fulfilled. We all have this hole, this missing, we all sense it, that there's something missing. And so we try and fill that hole any way we can. And what we've been sold throughout the decades is you can fulfill that through getting more stuff and getting a better house and a better car and a better spouse and all of this stuff. When in reality, what we're missing is the fact that we're not just an individual, in the universe. We are part of the universe. We're part of our world. We're part of each other.
So every morning, other than my usual meditation practice, I reflect on 4 questions. Who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? And what am I grateful for? In that sequence, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? What am I grateful for? And the biggest mystery, of course, is who am I? Because if I identify with my body, then that I can't figure out what that is. It started as a fertilized egg and it will end as dusty death. And it's just a process in awareness. If I think about my mind, that's also a process in awareness. My purpose is right now, I feel the same as yours, and that is to expand awareness and self-reflection to the point that we move from separation to unity. And gratitude is just for existence and the mystery of existence, and the fact that ultimately there comes a point where you surrender to that mystery because it's infinite, and the infinite cannot be conceived or imagined or understood by the rational mind except through equations. And so and even those equations are somewhere in consciousness. So I want to address a very significant issue in science today, notwithstanding everything that we know. I want to get your take on it because you seem to actually be very steeped in both self-awareness and also in the world of science and technology. And you have a mission, I think, right now that you're passionate about. So 1930, apparently, and this, not apparently, 1930, Indian poet, sage, mystic, seer by the name of Rabindranath Tagore, who's one of my heroes, met Einstein in Berlin, outside in some place called Potsdam. And they were discussing the nature of reality. And, Einstein said to Tagore, there are 2 views of the universe. One is the scientific view, and one is the human view, whatever he meant by that. And Tagore responded that the scientific view is also the human view, because it's the view of the human scientist, because, everything we know about reality comes from our understanding in the human mind of what reality is. And since then, in the philosophy of science, there has been really big discussion right now on something called naive realism, which is also called scientific realism. Is the world real, including the space and the stars and the earth and the moon that you see and your own body, or is it a projection of human consciousness interpreting human perception through a human nervous system? After all, the world I see is not the same as the experience of a bat that experiences the world as the echo of ultrasound, or a snake that navigates experience through infrared, or an insect with 100 eyes. That each biological species is having its own experience of the universe. I see the moon out there that Edgar Mitchell walked on, and yet somebody worships that moon, and a horseshoe crab has the experience of a moon, even in the depths of the ocean, when on a full moon night it surfaces to mate, and so on. Birds navigate through cycles of nature, whether they are cycles of the moon, seasonal cycles, planetary cycles. So Einstein admitted to Gore in that conversation that the view he had was that of a scientific human being. And then he went on to say, science is my religion, which was very nice of him to actually to compromise on that. Science is my religion, he said in that conversation. They became friends and they spoke later as well. Tagore was also a Nobel laureate, many years senior to Einstein. So today, naive realism says that the world would be exactly as humans perceive it, even if we weren't there. That, the moon, as we perceive it, is the real moon and not that of any other biological species. And it would exist even if we weren't there. And also, science currently is based on what is called subject-object split, which you are already contradicting. You're saying we are not divided, we are one. Mm-hmm. But science is not based on that. It's based on me, the observer, and that which is observed.
Not yet.
Not yet. And then science is also based on something. So it's first naive realism. Second, it's subject-object split. And third, it assumes an embodied observer. So right now, there's an assumption there's a little Ron somewhere in the brain looking at the world, or little Ron somewhere that's looking at the universe through these eyes, or listening to the universe through these ears. And no subject, no observer, no conscious agent can be found in the brain or the body with all the technology we have. So maybe even the idea of an embodied observer might be wrong. The body itself is an observation. And so who's observing, what is observing? And it looks like every species has a different experience of observation. So this is naive realism. This is subject-object split. And this separation is actually causing us to create those diabolical technologies that could lead us to extinction. And what you said, which was very profound to me anyway, is that we are expressions of infinity, everything that's finite. So the self that we speak of is part of the big self that is experiencing itself through these modalities of observation that we call biological organisms. Our body is just a sensor, and it takes a narrow band of activity, less than 0.01% of what's out there. And what we experience is a magical lie. Of course, we experience the earth as flat, which you discovered is not true when you're out there. We experience the ground as stationary, which is not true. It's spinning at dizzying speeds and hurtling through space thousands of miles an hour. We experience things as solid, including the book and this body, when we know they're proportionately as void as intergalactic space. So what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I mean, you brought up so many points. And, I've heard people talk about how there's absolute reality and then there's relative reality, right? And I don't know that I necessarily follow that. I think there's just reality. And, people say that there's the natural world and then there's supernatural phenomena. I don't believe that either. I just think there's reality, of which we are able, through our finite minds, to process some of it and not process other parts of it. And so, again, that's why I love Plato's allegory of the cave, because it's so appropriate. We've spent so much time classifying the shadows on the wall that we're reluctant to realize and to see and to seek out the larger world out there. And one of the things that you brought up is religion. And you talked about how Einstein said that science was his religion. And I think what science and religion have in common is they're both striving to bring us towards the truth, towards a greater understanding of the true nature of reality. And I think that's wonderful when you look at it as a vehicle. When religion is seen as a vehicle to point towards the truth, when science is seen as a vehicle to point to the truth, I think that's really appropriate. I think where followers of a specific religion, leaders of a specific religion, or even scientific leaders in different fields, where they go astray is when they mistake the vehicle pointing towards the truth for truth itself, when they try and cram the infinite into something finite. And I don't think, and again, this is just opinion, but I think science will never completely be able to explain reality, the true nature of reality, because the true nature of reality is infinite. And so there will always be, the more we learn, the more we understand, the more there is to understand. And I think where I've gotten in trouble, or what has caused me conflict in my intellect, or in my searching for the truth, is what we know so well is this linear timeline that starts in the past, goes to the future, and we could slice it up, and each one of those slices is now, and that's a finite timeline, and that's what our finite minds can understand. But perpendicular to each one of those slices of now is infinite eternity. And what I have gotten in trouble trying to do is cram infinite eternity into a finite timeline and try and make sense. And you can almost see science is trying to do the same thing. Science is trying to understand something that can't be understood in terms of a finite mind. And so when I say, I hate to use the analogy of two sides of a coin, but it's the only one I know. If on one side of the coin is space-time, the other side of the coin is infinite eternity. And infinity is not space that goes on forever. It's an existence outside of space. Eternity is not time that goes on forever. It's an existence outside of time. And so trying to wrap my head around space that goes on forever or time that goes on forever is where the disconnect comes. And so I think that, again, not a great analogy, but the two sides of the coin are reality. And we get glimpses into that perpendicular slice. And again, like I've experienced it in space, when we look at beauty, when we experience love, I think those are little glimpses into, and where nature is another good one, where we could get those glimpses into that perpendicular doorway into a larger reality. And so, again, I think there's just one reality, and we perceive it. And you brought up the different species that perceive it slightly differently. Nobody's wrong; they're just looking at it from different perspectives. And I think diversity of perspectives is a really powerful thing, because when you see things from different perspectives, we start, if you see it from two different perspectives, you're seeing it in stereoscopic vision. So the more perspectives we apply to a situation, the greater, or our search for reality, the greater our understanding, the deeper the depth of our understanding. And so that's why it's important to incorporate these other perspectives of the different species, or if we want to even go shallower, different political parties, different nationalities, different religions. The very strength of our diversity of perspectives is a great strength for us.
It's so beautifully expressed. I had the privilege of doing an interview the same way I'm speaking to you with Avi Loeb, who's a Harvard astrophysicist, originally from Israel. And he apparently claims that he spotted an extraterrestrial object from another solar system, extrasolar, that could be an advanced technology thousands of years ahead of us. So right now, the conversation is that there might be 2 trillion galaxies, 706 trillion stars, uncountable trillions of possibly habitable planets. And this object that he's identified is a technology object from an advanced civilization, so he claims. And he's getting, of course, into a lot of controversy, but at the same time, a lot of people saying that this is probably true, that there are civilizations across these galaxies that could be even more advanced than us. And that boggles the mind, for us who've been stuck here in this little speck of dust somewhere in the junkyard of infinity. So right now, as I speak to Ron, I'm asking all of you who are listening to us and watching us to please check his book out. I've read the chapters. Ron, where are you in your life now? What is your purpose? What are you passionate about? And I'd like to conclude the interview at some point with your call to action, which I think is very urgent at this moment. But where are you now? How are you spending your time, and what's your passion?
So I left NASA in 2013, and I left with the singular reason to be able to share this perspective with as many people as I can, unencumbered through as many mediums as I can. And so I left space with a call to action, a call to share this perspective, to share a perspective of unity, to share a perspective that we live on this paradise. We live in this beautiful, beautiful, fragile oasis that each and every one of us is riding through the universe together on this spaceship that we call Earth. That we're all interconnected, that we're all interdependent, that we're all family. And so, I've written books. My first book was The Orbital Perspective. I wrote Flowing in Darkness. I have another book, a children's book called Railroad to the Moon. I'm making documentary films. I started doing artwork, trying to capture the emotion and the spiritual aspect of seeing the planet from space. Everything I've done has been done with the objective to literally, in some cases, or figuratively transport people to this higher perspective, because I think this higher perspective really, a lot of things become clear. A lot of the pieces of the puzzle become clear. A lot of, looking at the planet from space, we look absolutely ridiculous. What we fight over, what we quarrel over, what we think is so important, all that stuff from that vantage point kind of blurs into insignificance. And what's left, when all of that kind of melts away, is our unity, our true unity, our true beauty, and the realization that you and every single person you meet is a perfect miracle. And as a perfect miracle, every person, regardless of their profession, their political identity, or any other perceived difference, deserves our respect, our compassion, our empathy, our care, even if those things are not reciprocated. And we're living in a very, very divisive and polarized world right now. And part of my objective for writing Flowing in Darkness was to illuminate a path out of that divisiveness, out of that polarization, and towards a future that we'd all want to become a part of. And so, like I said, everything I do, I've got a podcast, the Orbital Perspective podcast. I've, trying to put out, YouTube videos. There's a lot of videos around the book and the key messages of the book. And so that's what I'm spending my time on right now, and what my passion is spreading that perspective, because I really do believe, truly, in the deepest parts of my heart, that perspective is extremely powerful in overcoming all these limitations, all these diabolical aspects of our nature, all of this divisiveness, all of this polarization.
I've been speaking to Ron Garan. The book is Floating in Darkness, A Journey of Evolution, with a call to action at the end. I'm a fan, Ron, of what you're doing. And I think more people who listen to you and check out your contributions in all these areas, books, videos, your website, your lectures, what you're doing with entertainment and education at the same time, expanding our awareness, and also explicitly stating that love may be the ultimate truth. And love is not a mere sentiment, as Tagore said, but it could be the ultimate truth at the heart of creation, that we are one. There's a magnificent message there. I'm asking everyone to check your site out. We'll put all the links there, and to read your book, because it'll expand our own awareness into our divine nature. So I'm very, very grateful to you. And hopefully we can have another conversation around something else, another book that you are doing or another project you have.
Deepak, thank you so much. Like I said, it's a great honor. I'm a big fan of your work. I love everything that you're doing, and so this is a great honor for me to spend some time with you. I really appreciate it.
I hope that I get to see you in person, and
That would be awesome.
we'll have some adventures together.
Yeah,
I think of the future as meta-human adventures in the
exactly.
metaverse.
Exactly.